Thank you, Father. Well, I want to say gracias to Father Robert for inviting me to share, well, about the life and ministry of Bishop Romero. I was born and raised in Nicaragua. Where is Nicaragua? Nicaragua is in Central America. Uh, 5 countries: Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and Panama. Uh, it is Central America, that small piece of land connecting North America and South America. I can tell you that Central America is a paradise, but in the 70s and the 80s, it was living in hell. I can tell you that because I was there. Um, well, I was raised Roman Catholic. I am the fourth of 6 brothers and surrounded by holy women, very devoted Catholic. So it was kind of normal for any guy in the 70s to go to seminary and becoming a priest. So I was the one who spent 4 years in the Roman Catholic seminary. And it happened that I was in charge of the mail back in 1979. And I remember checking a newsletter coming from a priest, from an Episcopal priest. His name is on El Soto. He became bishop later. When checking the newsletter, I found very interesting things. I could see that there was a better life outside the Roman Catholic Church. So, I didn't know that there was a church allowing priests to get married. So I think that was the end of my life in the Roman Church. So in 1984, I became Episcopalian. I began my process for ordination. And I can tell you that I had been about 11 years of my life in seminary, Roman Catholic seminary, Episcopal seminaries, and evangelical seminaries too. So I was ordained Episcopal priest in 1989. On March 24th, 1980, I was seminarian at that time. And I was shocked when Bishop Romero was killed on that date. Today, I am serving in a congregation in which most families are coming from Central America, many Salvadorian families, Guatemalan families, families from Mexico, Ecuador, and Puerto Rico too. But I had been always, in a way, connected to the memory, to the legacy, and to the ministry of Óscar Romero. Who was Bishop Romero, for those who don't know too much about him? Well, he was the 4th Archbishop in the Roman Catholic Diocese of San Salvador. That's the capital of El Salvador. He was the Archbishop of San Salvador from 1977 to 1980, when he was assassinated. When reading his biography, you're going to find that Romero's father wanted him to be a carpenter. Well, Romero came from a very humble family, so father wanted to be sure that he was going to decent way of making his life. But Oscar decided to become a priest. And I have to say that he became a priest, and a very conservative priest. And later also he became a very conservative bishop in the Roman Church. What happened to him, being a very conservative bishop, developing a ministry, prophetic ministry? Well, I have to tell you that in the 1970s and 1980s, people of El Salvador, Guatemala, and Nicaragua in Central America, as I said, we were living in hell. In Nicaragua, for example, we were having a terrible civil wars. Most people in my generation, I will say 50,000 people were killed in a revolution. Um, and in Guatemala, I was a student in Guatemala in the 1970s. Something similar was happening. Guerrilla movement was fighting against army, and especially in indigenous towns and rural areas, more than 60,000 people were killed. And in El Salvador, something similar was happening. Um, a lot of people in the countryside were suffering a lot, and workers in the cities were suffering a lot because there was a dictatorship, and the army was um, well helping the dictator in turn to control the country, especially against communism. Many clergy, a lot of clergy, a lot of pastors, not just Roman Catholics, uh, people from different denominations, lay and clergy, were committed to work with peasants, workers, and students in their struggles against the military dictatorship that controlled the region. Maybe you remember till liberation theology. Liberation theology was in place in those particular years. I was raised in that way of doing theological reflection. Um, Visiting the neighborhood, the poor neighborhoods, and working with people was something really common. If you were a clergy, a religious person, or seminarian, or lay person. Um, so that was something difficult or complicated because religious people, committed people, were the target from the army. So Bishop Romero, as soon as he became Bishop of San Salvador, he saw how his priests, his laity, and leaders were brutally killed by paramilitary groups. Um, when reading his biography, he was deeply affected by the killing of his friend, another priest, Rutilio Grande. So after going through that experience, he just began to speak out against poverty, social injustice, torture, talking about the war between left-wing and right-wing forces in El Salvador. I'm going to read for you one portion of his last homily before he was killed. It said something like this: I would like to appeal in a very special way to the men of the army, and in particular to the troops of the National Guard, the police, and the garrisons. Brothers, you belong to your own people. You are killing your own brothers and sisters. When any of you receive order to kill given by a man, the love of God that says do not kill should prevail. No soldier has the obligation to obey an order counter to the love of God. No one has to comply with an immoral law. It is time now that you recover your conscience and obey it rather than the command of sin. Therefore, in the name of God and in the name of this long-suffering people whose laments arise to heaven every day, I beseech you, I beg you, I command you in the name of God, cease the repression. Well, the rest is history, you know. March 24, 1980 at around 11 a.m., he was doing the Holy Eucharist at the Divine Providence Hospital in San Salvador, and he was killed. Along with Romero, 75,000 Salvadorians were killed between 1979 and 1992. For years after Romero died as a Christian martyr, many Christians denominations had been honoring him as a saint, including the Church of England and the Anglican Communion. Romero is also one of the 10-20 century martyrs depicted in statues above the Great West Door in Westminster Abbey in London. In 2010, the United Nations General Assembly proclaimed March 24th as the International Day for the Right to the Truth concerning gross human rights violations and for the dignity of victims. In recognition to the role of Romero in defending human rights. Well, our brothers and sisters in the Roman Church were kind of late. They made his saint just 3 years ago on October 14, 2018. Well, as I said before, for me, life of Romero is pretty significant because I had the opportunity to hear, to be present at San Salvador Cathedral and listen one of his homilies. And also in the 70s, I witnessed the killing of many, many committed religious people. About 15 of my classmates in seminary were killed because of the commitment they made for those who were living in the oppression. I'm very glad to share uh, this information about Romero, and in Cristo Rey we had been honoring and celebrating life and ministry of Romero every March. This March is not going to be the exception. We are going to do it. I'm gonna tell you something that is gonna be shocking for you. A member of our congregation is Salvadorian, and he was in the army in the 70s. And also we have a good number of members who are Salvadorians. And this person was a military officer, and well, he came to the U.S. and he has a different life. But I remember that when meeting another person in the congregation, he said something like this: "This world is small because I was looking for you in El Salvador, because I knew that you were in the guerrilla movement and I was looking for you. You were lucky. I didn't find you. And here we are together, worshiping God in Cristo Rey. God save you. And also God is saving me too." So I just want to finish with that story because the effects of the war in Central America are there. We are every year, every Sunday, we work for the healing of those difficult years in our home countries. Very glad, as I said, to share, what is going on in our Central American community. But it is so good to know that Romero continues being a good model of a committed Christian for us. Gracias.